Siamo il GIAN, gruppo italiano Amici della Natura, parte del movimento internazionale Nature Friend International, attivo in oltre 40 paesi per promuovere la giustizia climatica, sociale e la connessione tra persone e ambiente.
Benvenuti sul podcast di Ecocowala. Oggi siamo con l'associazione di Cabeço Santo, partner portoghesi del progetto Ecocowala.
Background in agriculture, education, and ecology. In the past, he worked on ecotourism and now on heritage interpretation. We have with us Pedro Morais. Hi,
Hello, how are you?
Pedro. I'm good, and you?
Very well.
Then, biologist and ecologist. She works mostly with plants on identification and protections. Also, amphibian. A love being nature with people, and she should protect all creatures. Hi, Victoria Garbayo.
Hello, nice to be here with you all. Let's talk.
Let's start with the first question. What is the most complete definition of a forest proposed in the text beyond simply being land covered by trees?
Okay, so this is a more philosophical question, I would say, which is when we talk about definitions of words. And actually, the reasoning for talking about this in the text was a colleague of ours was looking in some different dictionaries. He looks in French and Portuguese and Italian, Austrian dictionaries for the definition of forest. Also on Wikipedia, if you don't want to do dictionary, it's also easy to do it. And in Portugal specifically, I remember him saying, here it doesn't say anything about the diversity of trees. It just says it's land covered by trees. And when we were writing this part of the handbook, I was writing something about this and looking for this definition. And all of them have land covered by trees. But is it enough to define a forest for all it is? Or if, let's say, we only have one species of trees, is it truly a forest? Is it comparable to a forest with many different species of trees and shrubs and bugs and mammals and birds? So what we propose is that we think not only about the trees, but what these trees can potentialize in terms of diversity. And I think we will go more deeply in this talk.
What does ecosystem services mean? And what are at least 3 examples of services provided by forests according to the text?
Yes, we can say that ecosystem services is everything that is important from the forest for humans. And we have a quick understand about the value that we can take from a forest, like wood, for example, that we can take for a forest. But there are also many other important values that we must understand in a forest. For example, forest, it's a place where the air can be renovated. So the forest have also a very important role to purify the air that we can use for not for only for humans, but for all animals that live from the forest. The forest is also provide food for everyone. And there are other services that are quite important. For example, the cultural services, the activities that everyone like to do in the forest. So this is not just one way to see the value of a forest, but we have lots of them. And for example, the information of the soil, that it's quite important to have soil for other activities. For agriculture, for example, it's important to understand the importance of the forest to retain and promote the formation of the soil. I talk about the purification of air, but also the purification of water. The quality of water depends of the forests. So we have many different ways to understand the value of a forest, and it is not only one of these, but it's the sum of all of them that is important to highlight when we talk about forests.
I just want to say that this concept of ecosystem services by this name has existed for 20 years, but it's quite recent that some researchers are trying to allocate specific amounts of money to each of these services that Pedro mentioned. So, in a way, it's still quite new in the minds of the people who have the money to invest, that it could be more beneficial to not extract directly a good from a forest. So, like all of the other compensations that you may have for a biodiverse forest, the compensations, I mean, the service, well, the innate value of it, of course, but also all of the costs that we have of flooding damage, let's say fire damage. All of this is like dark costs that you don't think about when you just think about this like 5 years period of I extract my wood, I get money. Yeah, but what if it all burns down and then burns down some public space and contaminates the water of the city? Like, how much does that cost? And so this kind of numeric value seems to be many times the way to reach people's minds, and so it's in the tip of the research about this.
How does biodiversity make a forest more resistant and resilient to climate change and other disturbances?
Yeah, so to understand this, we need to think about the difference between plants. There is a phenomenon of green blindness sometimes, we call it, which is people see trees and see plants and see shrubs, and they cannot recognize the difference between them so easily as you can between a rabbit and a fox, let's say. We are not so used to paying attention to plants, perhaps. But when we talk about this vegetal structure, the more diversity you have there, the more roles they will play. So different plants will fix different kinds of nutrients. They will be food for different herbivores. They will be shelter for different insects or amphibians. And so the more different players you have, the more interactions you can build. And in the end, very simply, each interaction that you have between two species forms like a web. And imagine if you were laying down on a hammock, like on a sleeping net, with like 10 wires, and someone comes and cuts 3. It's a hole and you will fall. But if the hammock has 300 wire and someone cuts 3, maybe the net can still hold your weight. And in this case, you would be the weight of climate change adaptation. So more heat. So the species can adapt around each other and rebuild some connections that otherwise would just be lost. This is the basic. I always use this example, which is the great hunger of Ireland, which is they only plant one kind of potato, and then comes a plague and ends all the potato. And the Irish could only eat potatoes. They were under British rule, so they starved to death because they have no more potatoes.
Okay.
Besides, the historic weight of this is this lesson of when you have no genetic diversity, when a threat comes or a pressure comes, you don't have enough opportunity for one being to be different genetically and have the gene that could offer the resistance to this disease or to this changing environment. So even when we talk about food production or wood production or any kind of production, when we are just planting clones or just one species very similar in genetic composition as species are,
So
less opportunity we have less opportunity to restore in case something goes wrong.
Okay. So,
Okay,
yeah.
sorry. Yes, I would like to add something that could be interesting to understand, to visualize this biodiversity in a forest. We have different kinds of plants and different kinds of animals. And for example, we have animals that are helping the forest to seed new trees, to have new plants. So the relation between animals and plants is very important. And if we have this biodiversity, we have more resilience of the forest. For example, if there are some fire, some seeds are in the place to create new plants after that. So this is another way to understand this importance of the biodiversity in a forest.
Okay, thank you. So, why are forest monocultures considered problematic compared to mixed or natural forests?
Okay, we can say that monoculture forests, sometimes we have difficult to accept them as forests because they try to have at the minimum number of species there, and of course the biodiversity is very low. So we have lots of problems about that. We have not the possibility to the forest resists for some problems, but we have other problems that could happen. For example, if we have the same culture, and in the Portuguese context, we have, for example, a huge area of eucalyptus that are very inflammable. We have the problem of the fire, and this is quite dangerous because there are no trees that help to cut the fire if starting some point. So in the past, for example, in 2017, we had a very huge fire that was almost 2 days burning, or more than 2 days burning the central region of Portugal, and the fire could ran more than 200 kilometers, and a huge area of the central the central zone of Portugal were burned. So this is one idea, but there are lots of problems about monoculture. For example, if we are thinking about the different ecosystem services, of course they are very poor. For example, one important ecosystem service of the forest is to give us food. It's some kind of reserve of food. For example, a forest can have mushrooms, but if we have a monoculture, the mushrooms are very related with this species of trees, for example, and we have not a biodiversity, a good diversity of mushrooms. It's an example. So there are lots of aspects that in a monoculture forest we have problems, and we have less importance for the people.
Usually, monoculture is not the fact that it only has one species. It's associated with this form of production that is very intense. And usually they are very proud, the owners of, I can see between my trees from these kilometers away. Like there is no bush, there is no understory. It's just the trees, right? So we know that different strata, we call it stratification in the forest, really helps to fixate the soil and absorb water when it rains. So in many cases you will have rivers, right? And then you will have the mountains around, so a valley. And it's this different strata of plants and structure that when the water comes, it will not go so fast it will not bring so much dirt with it. It will be absorbed into the soil and used by the plants. So when you have no cover on the soil, what we call the naked soil, when the water comes, it brings super fast all of the dirt, all of the particles, erosion, right, into the water. And this is what causes floods. And in some cases, as we are talking about intensive forest culture, right, forestry, also herbicides and pesticides and fertilizers.
Mhm.
So this mix of chemicals is going inside the river, and the river is going through the cities, and it's the water that we drink, it's the water that we also use for recreation. It's the water that ends up going into the ocean, so it's a lot of pollution also. It's risking the growth of eutrophication, which is when the water becomes very contaminated, let's say, by a growth of algae. It's smelly, when you go to a bog and you see like green water and it smells bad, that's eutrophication. But in the bog, it's a normal process, but in some cases. But yeah, we don't want that in our rivers, in our fish, in our drinking water. So that's also an important aspect.
So the chemicals are the most negative things for the plants, for the nature.
I wouldn't say it's the most negative thing. It's one of many anthropogenic touches that we have put, because of course you'll have secondary when you use chemicals and they are not contained to the area you want them to be, and rarely they are, you will have some secondary effects also. But I think that this is true of every human action. We have secondary effects that spread.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. What are the main effects of wildfires on forest ecosystem and on people?
Okay, I will start with people because I think it's quite clear.
Yes.
Supposedly, you should not plant trees very close to cities and to your home and to rivers, but people will do it because also it's not their fault. I think if you are a small producer, I really don't think it's your fault that this is the best way to make money. Because in many cases, these are people who have their own histories and they have grown in this environment. And so someone comes to them, this is how you make money, they will try to make money. But the problem is that who is supposed to take care so these kinds of things don't happen, that you endanger yourself and others, does not many times follow through on this promise to regulate. And so you have many cases of trees planted all up, production being done all up to people's houses. And so in the big fire that Pedro mentioned of 2017, lots of people lost their homes. The roads are cut off. Many people died in the fire. I don't know how many. Pedro, do you remember?
More than in that fire of 2 days were more than the 60 persons. Yes.
Exactly. So I guess some people, it's quite clear to see, uncontrolled wildfire. Unfortunately, we've been hearing about it all the time. But on the forests, do you want to add something, Pedro?
Yes, I would like to add something that happened in that fire. Was a very huge fire. That after the fire, for example, in the year after, it was a very huge population of rats that can propagate because there was not an equilibrium in the ecosystem caused by the death of the animals that usually eat that rats. So the snakes, the rapins, birds they have killed in the fire, and then there was a direct effect for people, and there was rats in almost of that places. So the question of fires, it have we can identify lots of problems directly connected with people, with the contamination, chemical contamination of water after the fire, because there are lots of products from the fire that will contaminate water. The problems of people that have their houses and also their fields burned. Problems for
Air quality.
agriculture. Yes,
Yeah.
air quality was very bad, and there was people that get with disease because they have too much smoke, and also then problems related with the equilibrium of the ecosystem. So because everything was very unbalanced after the fire, so lots of problems we can identify. Yes.
Okay, and instead, what do you mean with the concept of One Health?
Okay, One Health, it is important because this is the very related with the concept of ecosystem, because normally we think about an ecosystem as something that is in the field, in a very a green place, but in fact ecosystem, we can see that we are inside of the ecosystems, and everything that happens in that ecosystem are very related with human population. And if we have a very good strong, how can I say, strong, the word equilibrium sometimes is not exactly equilibrium, but some resilient forest, we also have more conditions and health forest. We have very better conditions to have good health for population. And here we can talk about some aspects that are related with cultural services from the ecosystems of the forest, and there are lots of activities that now each time are more have more demand about connection of people and the forests. The forest bath, for example, it's one of these activities, but all other visits in the forest, and also it is possible to learn in the forest. And for that, for all of these systems, it's very important to have a very good forest, because it's in that places then we can have many things to learn about forests, because everything, every pieces of the ecosystem are present there, what don't happen in monoculture forests. So this is important for this global relation between everything that happens in nature and everything that is happening with public health and with populations that lives around forests and connected with forests.
Yeah, we don't even have to go so far back for this one. If we think about the pandemic of 2020, it was a zoonose, which means it was a disease that was passed on from an animal to a human. And if we think about the fact that we are expanding more and more into these animals' territories, we are taking away their living place. And so it's only natural that they will start coming into ours too. And in some cases in the pandemic, everyone was liking, oh, look, the wild animals are back in the city. Okay, some pictures were shared, like, okay, what if it was like this? Nice, but on the other side, more contact we have, with animals, the more we also invade their personal space, the more likely we will trade some germs as well, in a way, some unwanted contact that, well, in this case, some unwanted contact with a bat created what we remember, many deaths, and yeah, it's not so far away.
So 2020 was better for the animals more than for us.
Certainly.
So thank you, Victoria, thank you, Pedro, for being here with us.
Ringraziamo Pedro e Victoria per la loro testimonianza e per la loro disponibilità.
E ci vediamo al prossimo episodio. Ciao Vittoria, ciao Pedro e ciao a tutti.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao.